Hey guys, Immortalize here. Back in 0.1, the Stormweaver was one of the meta ascendancies, with just about every build being able to obliterate all the game's content. Then 0.2 Dawn of the Hunt came along, and they absolutely gutted everything that made the ascendancy strong. We knew it was coming, but oh boy did they go in hard. With Path of Exile 2 0.3, the third Edict first approaching, adding new spell mechanics, reworked Ascension nodes, altered supports, and new passive tree nodes, the Stormweaver is looking to be back in a healthy spot again. I have a league starter build I wanted to bring to you all, which aims to utilise all three elements, fire, cold and lightning, in order to rain down hell upon your foes. Bear in mind that this is mostly theory and a rough draft until we can get to play the update, since we don't have all the information about the patch yet, but it should comfortably get you through the campaign and into the endgame without any troubles. If you check out the planner on Mobalytics, which is in the description down below, this will give you a full breakdown of the build, and I'll aim to update this as soon as possible after release, for all of you to enjoy. Before we get to that though, let's go into some of the changes that should make Stormweavers fun to play again. Elemental Infusions are a new mechanic GGG are introducing in the 0.3 update that allow you to boost certain elemental skills with other elements for additional effects and damage. In some cases, these change the way they play entirely. It's hard to say how effective these will be just now, as there are still quite a few unknowns about the update, but they could potentially be very strong, and if they are, the Stormweaver definitely lends itself the best towards playing a multi-element spellcaster by gaining access to infusions easier than any other ascendancy. There's many different skill updates in this upcoming patch, guys, so I'm only going to go through a few of the most important ones for your league starter, but it's worth checking out the patch notes to go through all the different elemental spells, because some of them that I'm not going to mention will benefit from the infusion system. So Fireball is the first one. I'm going to test this out when we release, when the patch releases, and this has been swapped with Ember Fusillade. So it's now a skill gem level 3 spell, so you can get it very early on as opposed to much later at level 9, which is now where Ember Fusillade is. The base damage has been dramatically increased, and it can now consume fire infusions to create extra projectiles. And most importantly, these extra projectiles can hit the same target as the primary projectile. So this is going to mean you can do a lot more damage with one cast, with all the secondary projectiles going off and hitting the same target. Now, and those have had their base damage dramatically increased by like 3 to 4 times at the high level gems, so it'll be very interesting to see how strong Fireball ends up being, apart from potentially breaking PCs. A fan favourite probably in the upcoming patch will be Arc. Again, the base damage has been dramatically increased. It's now classed as a projectile, so it gains access to all the projectile-based tagged benefits, such as skills and such. It gives 50% more shock magnitude, so you're going to be shocking fire easier with it, and it can be infused with lightning infusions for extra damage and additional chains. Now, this is something I believe is probably going to be quite strong. I do believe this might end up being weaker against single target though, but we'll have to wait and see. I think Fireball will end up being better for single target, but only time will tell, because there's just so many unknowns still. Frost Darts is coming, a brand new ice skill, and this I believe is going to be a level 3 skill gem spell as well, because Frost Bolts has been moved to level 5. This is almost the same as ice shards in other games of this kind, and it fires a load of icy projectiles that hit a target, and it can consume an ice infusion to lodge those projectiles into its target and then explode. And as it hits, it creates chunks of ice around the target that also explode and hit it. So this could be potentially very, very good for single target damage, maybe. None of us really know yet because it's a brand new spell, but it's you basically get access to lightning, fire and cold very early on with your sort of primary expected sort of target skills, and I reckon all three of these will work just fine with this build I'm bringing to you. You'll just pretty much choose which one you prefer, slap it in the build, maybe change a couple of nodes, and off you go. Flame Wall. This has been boosted to be able to consume lightning infusions, so where you normally spawn your ring or your line of fire, you get your flame wall come up, it will now consume a lightning infusion to come up with fire and lightning. So all your projectiles that go through this will be able to pick up fire and lightning extra damage. Particularly good for now that Arc's a projectile skill, and Fireball and Frost Darts. They're all projectile skills, so they'll all benefit from this. So this is going to be very good for leveling on. Living Bomb has been swapped with Solar Orb. So now Living Bomb is a spell that you cut, and Solar Orb is now an implicit on a staff, which you can't get till level 16 onwards. So Living Bomb can generate your fire infusions. So early on, we're likely to use this to generate those fire infusions if you choose to use Fireball, because you're going to need to be able to generate these. Later on, you could swap this for Solar Orb and use the implicit off the staff, and that will generate you fire infusions instead. But you can pretty much pick or choose which one you prefer. I have a feeling I'll end up on Solar Orb eventually, but we'll start with Living Bomb because we can get this quite early on now. The other one I want to mention, which is an honorary mention, which will be far later down near the end of the campaign, is Firestorm. This is one that's been shown off in the showcase. It's one that nearly every build in Stormweaver will probably use, or at least test. But this obviously is where you rained down your meteors before, and you could make it just do loads and loads of fire projectiles. Well, now it can consume all of the different infusions to do extra fire bolts, extra cold bolts, extra lightning bolts, do all of the ailments if you choose to keep it on there. You could, and it just rains down hell with all the different elements. This could potentially be very, very powerful for clearance, for single target. We don't know exactly how this scales yet, but this looks pretty insane, to be honest. If you can generate enough infusions so that every time you cast this, you're getting all three, which should be possible in the Stormweaver, probably without too much pain, this could end up being very good. So we're looking forward to trying this one out. Moving on to some of the more specifics about what I'm excited for Stormweaver and this build, the Trinity Gem, which is a spirit gem which usually only in the past worked for attack-based builds. So where you would cast fire, cold, or lightning, whichever one you're casting, it would reduce the power of your other two elements, but it would increase the power of the element that you're casting, essentially. But if you flattened your damage across all three elements, they would all boost together, for example. But this did not work with spells before. This is a pretty understated change in general, I think, because this now does work with spells, which means we gain access as a spellcaster to this new, absolutely massive multiplier, which we did not have before. And there are going to be ways to scale this potentially to broken levels. Again, we need to test this out, but just two things I can mention off the top of my head. One of them, you could use something like the Painter's Serve and Torn Gloves to make it so all your elemental damage just turns to 30, a third cold, a third fire, a third lightning, so you're always hitting with all three, which means they all just scale in damage all the time, and none of them get reduced in power to benefit the one you're casting. So you're just going to end up getting loads of elemental damage across the build in all the different elements as opposed to one, and you can just play generic elemental damage all the way. The other way is to use the new Archon system, which we'll go into in a moment, and that could potentially also work very well with this. It's again a big unknown because it's brand new, but it could potentially be very, very, very strong. The Archon system, as we just mentioned, is a new feature they've added in patch 0.3. And this is one feature I think will be particularly strong for the Stormweaver, since it plays into the elements, and that is specifically designed to play into the elements. So what it does is, after you spend 100% of your maximum mana, you will turn into an elemental Archon of that kind. You can choose cold, light, fire, or lightning. They have a new cluster underneath their respective clusters at the top of the tree, as shown on the screen. And once you activate this, it turns all of your elemental damage to that element. So if you're doing fire, lightning, and cold damage, and you activate the cold Archon, all your damage will become cold, 100%, and it gives you additional cold damage as well. And if you did the lightning one, you get additional lightning damage, and if you did the fire one, you'll get additional fire damage. Now, this is particularly great because it means you wouldn't need to use the Painter's Serve at Torn Gloves to combine with Trinity. You're just making all of your damage one element, so you don't need to make it so that each element's a third anymore. You can just play into one element, boost that one to absolute sky heaven, and all of your damage is going to benefit from that all the time. It also means you can just specialize into that element using all of the specialty nodes that benefit from cold damage, lightning damage, and fire if you choose to do so, and maybe some other wild interactions like converting to fire and then using the fire to chaos node and going to chaos build. Potentially you could do this. There's some unknowns about this. We don't know how easy it will be to keep up. Can you get to a point where you can have 100% uptime? That would be amazing if you could. We don't know how long it lasts for. We don't know what the increase of damage is, and we don't know what the extra node is that comes off of it in that cluster. So we've got to wait and see until we get in there, and I will definitely be testing this out when we get to it. But this, in combination with the Trinity Gem on top of the new tri-element sort of infusion system, could all come together just to be very strong regardless of what spell you really choose to play. Moving on to Ascension Updates, the Stormweaver Ascension nodes have had a fair bit of change in 0.3 in favour of supporting the new Elemental Infusion system, as well as adding a potentially very useful defensive mechanic to the Force of the Will node. Path of the Storm has been updated to grant a 50% chance of gaining an additional different elemental infusion when you pick one up. This is particularly useful because it means when you pick up a cold infusion, it's a coin flip whether you might get a fire or lightning one as well. And obviously if you're picking up loads of them all the time, you're just going to be generating loads of infusions all over the place. And based on the showcase they gave us, it looked to us like the timer on these infusions is reasonably decent, so like 15-20 seconds or higher, and you can stack multiples of them, but we don't know how many you can stack at once. So you really want to get to a world where you can just stack all the elements all the time, or at least the ones you're interested in your build, and just keeping them up, so every time you cast your spells they're always using infusion. And this Ascension node will definitely help you towards it. Definitely during leveling, it may well just be amazing in the end game as well to help keep this up. We'll have to see, because the more cast speed you've got, the quicker you're going to consume them. This will be one of the main reasons for taking Stormweavers over other ascendancies when it comes to the tri-element sort of play style. It may be quite difficult to sustain the infusions on other ascensions when we get to it, so you wouldn't be able to do quite the same thing, or it might just feel clunky on other ones. We don't know. Say like Blood Mage is very popular right now and people are saying it's going to be a lot better. That may well be the case, but if it turns out the infusions are actually really good, and in combination with Trinity and the Archons, and you just need to sustain them, and Stormweavers really is the only way you can sustain them very well, then that kind of leads you to a point where Stormweavers has a place in the class list specifically for that kind of playstyle. Force of the Will has been finally fixed to not infinitely scale, but as a result it has got a pretty drastic increase to the arcane surge power the more mana you are missing. This, in conjunction with the Arcane Surge buff, which has kind of been hidden away a little bit, will lead to access to faster cast speeds earlier on. It was 10% more cast speed to start with. It's now 15% increased cast speed. So that means earlier on you're going to get a lot more cast speed, and it means it will scale off of the effectiveness or magnitude a bit better. In addition to this, it also now grants 20% damage is taken from your mana before life. So this is an interesting one, because we normally take Mind Over Matter on Stormweaver later, eventually, to make your mana your life pool, and then you can go Chaos Inoculation, and then you can just use Energy Shield, and then you become very tanky. If there's a world where we could get 100% damage taken from mana before life without using Mind Over Matter, even if that requires extremely good endgame gear and all these new abyssal affixes, say, then we essentially get Mind Over Matter for free, and then we could start looking at playing something like Eldritch Battery, which would play into Archons very well, would give you way more mana. You can use mana scalers again, and so on. So these are all a lot of unknowns. I don't know if this will be possible, but nonetheless, this will, with the amount of insane amounts of mana regen we can get, and based on the extra mana regen you're going to get, the lower your mana is, it essentially just gives you more effective HP. It will help you not get one shot. So this could be very valuable. I'm not sure if I'll take this earlier on, because it might make you too squishy earlier on before you get that mana regen, but later down the line I think this will be very good. Another honorable mention in the Ascension tree that's changed, and it could be very good for certain kinds of builds, is now the Rain Dancer Ascension node, which has been changed from giving 150% cooldown to your Elemental Storms, the skill that's baked into your Ascension tree, and it's now been changed to +1 limit to all elemental skills. Now, this is very, very, very good, because I believe Frostbomb is having a limit put on it, your Orb skills have got limits on it, your Elemental Storms have got limits on it, and there's various other spells that have got limits on it, and that will just straight up give you +1 to all of them. So this could be, if you wanted to play an Elemental Storm build, this will be very good. You can get more orbs all over the place. You can place more frost bombs down, especially if you put overabundance in every single one of them. So you can end up just getting crazy amounts of these spells where you wouldn't normally be able to get it. This is very specific. It will be a very niche kind of take on the spells, depending on how you're playing and what you're playing, but it could be very good. Support gem updates in general, it's probably worth noting these in case you haven't seen this already. In the past, you could only use one copy of each support gem across your build, regardless of what skills you've got in. They have completely overhauled this system for patch 0.3, so you can now use multiple versions of each support gem. And they've made it so each support gem has a tier from 1 to 5, and they change as they go up. So they gain in power, they gain extra additional bonuses and extra modifiers depending on how high you are. are, and then when you get to like the highest tiers, apparently they just straight up change how they work. So that could be extremely interesting for build crafting. This obviously does affect how the build is for the League Starter, but I believe the League Starter will still be based on how the support gems were before. I think the support gems changing will happen in the higher tiers, and we won't really get to that in the campaign probably, but if we do, I will update the build guide as we go. This does mean you can use some of the stronger support gems in more than one spell or skill, depending on which kind of build you're playing. And this, honestly, will just make your build way better, way more flexible. You'll be able to play the way you want to play. It'll be much more interesting to play around with all this stuff. So hopefully this should unlock some of the power in Stormweaver that we were really limited with before, as it will do on all the other Ascensions as well. As I mentioned before, guys, I have got a Mobalytics planner for this build. It's on screen right now. It's a Stormweaver build, and it's playing into all three of the elements, which is why I've called it the Trinity Stormweaver. It's designed for players of all experience, and it takes a balanced approach towards offense and defense. I've done it this way deliberately so that new players that come in will be able to use it and not have an awful time playing through, and experienced players can come in and you can chop and change things as you like, go full damage if you like, and you can just blast through the campaign as you do. But it does mean that less experienced players of Path of Exile 2 will be able to play this build. It gives you a pretty decent amount of defense and energy shield regeneration, which gives you a slightly more forgiving play style, and it also gives you a pretty decent amount of damage as well. And it gives you a lot of recommendations on uniques if you do drop them, what you can use, and it's got some fairly decent amounts of written detail in there, so be sure to check out that if you're interested in how things work. And I will be updating this as we play. I'll be doing a 24-hour blast from the start of the season, and when that league starts, I will basically try and update that guide as we go. So keep an eye on the changelog directly at the bottom, and you'll see every time I update something from that point onwards, I will make a note of what's changed so you will know what's changed. You can also track my build on it as well, guys, if you want. There is a track the builds button on the guide, so if you click this, it will track my character as I'm playing, so you'll be able to see what I've used. Now obviously that will be based on whatever I find as I go, but I'll update the guide if I decide to do anything drastically differently, so keep an eye on this, guys. And if you're interested in the update on the build guide, guys, make sure you hit the favorite button. This will alert you when there's updates to the builds, and you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to see it whenever that's happened. Final thoughts, guys. There's still so much unknown about this new update, and it's really hard to say with absolute certainty how good the Stormweaver will be compared to other Ascension classes, especially since even now, even last night, they have dropped some nerfs and buffs to classes, so things could even change before it drops at the end of today. But I believe the Stormweaver has a lot of promise in there, probably a lot more than people are giving it credit, but that's really because there's just so much unknown about pretty much all of these new systems. Stormweaver is going to be making use of all of these new systems, and we really don't know how they're all going to gel together and how strong they're going to be in the end game and such until we get there. But I do believe it's going to be quite good. I think it's going to deliver some very fun builds, and I'm personally really excited to see what I can do with the Stormweaver as a caster spell lover. Until next time, guys, keep safe, much love, see you in the next video.